All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Netra Pan. If you don't know me, I'm dialing in from Switzerland, and I'm really excited to be here with Victoria Princewill, who's joining us from London. This is an experiment of a new format that we want to use to celebrate amazing Sandboxer news and Sandboxer initiatives. And Victoria is here to test it out, and we get to learn all about her new book, which just came out. Victoria, can you please tell us what is the name of your new book and what is it about?
Thanks, Netra. So here I'm going to try and show you a little bit of the cover. It is called In the Palace of Flowers, and it is a book set in Iran in 1895, and it follows these East Africans, Abyssinians, who were enslaved, and they are trying to pursue a life of meaning, navigating the political royal court and the radicals outside. So it is about turmoil, it is about love, it is about history, forgotten history, and it's about trying to discover yourself.
Wow, that sounds so exciting. What a trip. You said, what year was it set in again?
1895.
1895. Wow. So time travel and geographical travel in a time when we can't move out of our seats. What was the motivation for writing the book, Victoria?
So I've always wanted to write. I've always been a reader, and I feel like so often when you're a writer, when you're a reader, you do end up sort of trying out writing and things like that. But to me, it was the fact that this story had never been told. I didn't know anything about Africans migrating to the Middle East, let alone Iran. There's an existing contingent of Black Iranians right now who live there, who a lot of Iranians don't know about. And it seems like the perfect kind of story. I think that historical fiction has a way of bringing humanity back to people we've forgotten about and back to ourselves. And I think there's something about legacies that I'm really interested in. What do you leave behind? And I think stories are really powerful legacies. And I wanted to kind of bring those things together.
Wow, that's super powerful. We're talking about formerly enslaved or currently enslaved characters in your book.
So in the book, they are enslaved, but this refers to the trans-Saharan slave trade. So yeah, that has ended. I think it was formally ended in the 20th century, but various earlier points when it was sort of unofficially ended as well. But yes, it's a story about enslavement. It's a very different kind of slavery to the transatlantic, in that these were very educated slaves. They were prized. The Shah's daughter's first language was an Afro-Persian dialect. They had a lot of things that meant that what am I trying to say here? They had a lot of things that we can almost draw parallels to as young 21st century people. They had an education, they had relative freedom of movement. They were almost like hand servants, but they were still owned. So I found myself thinking, what are the psychological implications of that, where you have some autonomy, but not really, and there is a lot of trauma. And all around there's a radical movement of people trying to, of Iranian nationals trying to assert themselves as citizens. And how would that affect how you thought about yourself?
Would you consider your book pure fiction or historical nonfiction? How would you classify it?
So it's historical fiction. So basically the origins of it are that I saw an article by a visual anthropologist, as he described himself, in The Guardian, and it showed photos of these opulently dressed Abyssinian slaves taken, in Iran, and the photos were taken by the Shah of Iran. And so that led me on a journey of sorts, I guess, like researching all about this, and I came across the true story of my mate, who became my main character, Jamila Habashi. The existing story is about a paragraph long, and just talks about her sort of shuttles from man to man and city to city. And I found that I wanted to bring a richer inner life to that. I found to myself that in a way I almost told my own story, and that I felt even if this content is flimsy, what we have of her, the fact that it survived for so long in her own words, where nothing else really had, in the words of an enslaved person at the time, meant that I wanted to imbue her with the qualities you might expect in someone who was pushy enough to have their work, kind of like outlast them when no one else could, right? So she's, driven and annoying and righteous and sincere and all these sorts of complex things. But so yeah, it's historical fiction because the story, what's happening politically at the time is true. You know, the Shah, a lot of the characters are real. Jamila, though she didn't live in the palace, is real. And it's also fiction because the story is, her particular story is fiction. So are the other, some of the other characters. So it's a blend of the two.
Wow, historical fiction is one of my favorite genres. I think it's so powerful that you crafted, you know, really complex characters around an important time in history, in a place that many people may not be particularly familiar with. And, you know, in this day and age when we're so caught in actually narratives about identity, I think it's going to be so valuable to look at another historical context and use this moving and probably entertaining, even though probably some tragic as well in some cases, this story to reflect on our own times. So bringing us back to our own times, how was it actually launching a book during the pandemic?
You know, it was interesting. We moved the date quite a few times, and I think even though it was still during the pandemic, that was useful because it meant that by the time it came out, we were a little used to books coming out in the pandemic. So we kind of knew how to organize. And what was nice was that in the same way that I'm talking to you now, a lot of people who were international turned up and sort of tuned in for it. We had a digital launch. I've still got the remnants of some balloons behind me. I'm not sure if you can see it, but I had like balloons and posters. And, you know, because of, you know, the way the book is called In the Palace of Flowers, it, you know, the binding is all, I'll just show you again, because it's all just very kind of like beautiful. And so we just created a really gorgeous kind of visual theme, basically. And a friend of mine who's a freelance journalist came over. We both had the COVID. We both been tested before that and so forth. But we did an interview, and it was just, it was really nice. I think I was quite struck by how nice it was to get comments during the digital launch. And I think whilst it might surprise some people, I can be a bit shy. So if it had been like me, the attention on me in a room, I might have felt more awkward. This was quite, it was international and it was quite sincere. And there was, yeah, and the distance wasn't a problem. It was nice. I've enjoyed it.
That's so nice. I mean, to see the fruits of your hard labor reach the world and connect with people during the pandemic, I think, you know, on the flip side, that's also all you can ask for, right? That you've given yourself, but as well as yourself, other people, some color and some excitement, some movement. You mentioned a digital launch. So how are you actually getting the word out about your book?
So in a number of ways. So various apps like Clubhouse is actually quite a good app because it's audio. And I think we've already had a culture of people listening to books as well as reading them. So it's quite common to feel connected via language. And so we've been talking, I've been hosting a couple of rooms, and I'm quite excited to do so on themes now, because there's so many different ways in which this ties into the modern world, kind of, as you said before, what we think about identity, what we think about geography, how we assert ourselves, you know, with all these competing narratives. The other ways, I'm doing a podcast actually in a couple of weeks, and just having more of these kinds of digital, almost like interviews, panels, talks. There's been a lot of that, and I think one of the most interesting ways that I've been quite touched by is a few people who have got the book, especially if they already live in, you know, the UK or in Europe. They're doing like book clubs, which I think is really like a nice organic way of like connecting other people to it. Because again, it, you know, getting it out is one thing, but I remember when people asked me how I felt when it was out, and really, I'm not sure I really felt anything until I heard feedback, and there was something that I was connecting with people over, and it made me realize how much writing a book is not about like the individual achievement. It's about having stories connect with people, right? And so being able to see that the words had like resonated with people moved me beyond belief. But if you said, "Are you excited for having a book out?" I wouldn't be able to convey that immediately. But it's just the best thing. So yeah,
Right,
it's been podcasts, it's been interviews, it's been, yeah.
Sandbox.
Really,
speaking of book, sorry, I didn't mean to speak over you. Speaking of book clubs, Sandbox has a book club about your book too, right?
I think I feel like I've been told this is happening, but I don't know any more information than that. Oh, I think have you just been it? Ah, there you are. I will find out more. I'll be quite excited to yeah, maybe do a quick Q&A when they're at the end of that. But I think that'd be a really good thing to spearhead in general, just getting us all reading together. Yeah.
Wonderful. Which can you share a passage from your book that you've had on your mind lately?
Sure. I'm going to, so it's interesting, I'm going to read actually from chapter 1, but I think that something about the first chapter really does kind of set the stage for everything that it talks about and everything that I think is central to it. So, chapter 1 from In the Palace of Flowers. We shall be forgotten, Jamila realized, watching the funeral rites with empty eyes. She usually enjoyed the funerals. The slaves heard the tragedies first. Gossip slid through walls and under doors. Distress seeped into antechambers. The news, like the life itself, unspooled quickly. In the first house where she had served, Jamila would rise early to hear the recitation of the Quran from the roof. Back then, the older slaves would turn a blind eye while she darted into an empty bedroom to peer through a window, scanning the roofs of the houses nearby to see where the Imam was reciting from. He was stand on the roof that housed the deceased. The sound of his announcement, a bell to her mind. She had always enjoyed the sobriety. A life had been lost, and that weight meant something. Precisely what, she remained unsure of. It was January, almost the end of the year. Death seemed fitting as an end to a cycle. Still, Jamila did not want to be there. But whilst women were forbidden from the service, any Abyssinian slave who had served him had to be present. And so Jamila stood amongst them at the back of the mosque. He had been one of the noblemen free to enter the harem, a physician for the Shah and his wives. Jamila, recalling his slithery presence, suspected the slave's attendance was required to bolster the numbers. The Imam's monotone never wavered. Jamila was bored. She stared up at the curved dome of the mosque's ceiling. Thousands of minuscule sapphire tiles adorned it. Mingled with dazzling glass, the tiles dripped from the walls. She sought to count them, but glancing around, saw hers was the only upturned face. She stared at the floor. She traced a silk embroidered shoe over the marble, wishing she could stand on the slivers of exposed stone. She looked up. Every slave in the mosque faced forward. There was nary a shuffle nor a sigh. She lowered her shoulders and lifted her chin, trying to practice solemnity. The faces of the nobles were haggard and drawn. The prince, her old playmate behind closed doors in the Harlem quarters, who used to sneak smiles at her through crowds. He too was facing forward, his expression indistinguishable from the rest. For a moment, she wondered how he might behave at her funeral. But of course, she would not have one. Not long ago, the slave had died. He was thrown into an unmarked spot in one of the gardens where a glut of bodies lay. Jamila could not help but see them in her mind, jumbled together, anonymous, rotting, mute. Nobody was notified. Whoever his birth family was, they remained ignorant. Filled with faint hope, perhaps, or muted despair. So a cheerful group.
Wow. I mean, wow, that is incredible. Thank you, Victoria. Yeah, so many reactions there. The beautiful idea of memento mori and the interesting perspective of the young underdog essentially, and viewing the world from her eyes. I love the detail, for example, you know, the advantages of being a slave, right? So getting to attend basically this event. Wonderful. What a teaser. In closing, Victoria, how can Sandboxers support you?
It is a nice, and yeah, it is a nice question. I suppose, well, I have some upcoming events. So on the 11th of May is when the international launch of the book is going to be. So, well, it's going to arrive in particular. So I think I'll be posting things around that in the run-up. But I guess I would absolutely love it if people had the time to tune in and maybe ask me some questions. I will do a short reading and talk a little bit about it then. And yeah, maybe I will sort of make a point of talking about the things I have coming on Sandbox, you know, posting links and things. And if people were to, yeah, just engage, share, support, that would be really meaningful.
Incredible. And where can we find the book? What's your preferred place of purchase?
So I think if you're international, it's, you know, bookshop.org has like a load of like sort of global sites. And I think Book Depository, and also stuff like, I'm pretty sure like Barnes and Noble have it, you know, Blackwell's have it. I think Amazon might have it, but you know, if we can avoid Amazon, that's fine by me. But I'm not sure also if in the States what's going on with that. But bookshop.org is pretty much the de facto place I've been encouraging people to get. So yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I'd love to ask you more questions, but I actually think it might be good to let this small teaser actually motivate us to read the book, give you some good reviews, and continue following your journey. Thank you so much, Victoria, for joining us. And to any Sandboxers out there that also have amazing news, this is a great format that we are prototyping. I got so much joy hearing from Victoria. You know, I feel horrible to talk about enslaved people with a huge smile on our faces, but you know, we are celebrating getting to tell their story, and this is a huge milestone for you. So super proud of you, and super grateful that you took the time to share with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Honestly, I'm excited to be doing this, but I think I'm really excited by this format. I think it'll be a really good way to spotlight all the stuff we're doing and bring all the Sandboxes like closer together. So thank you so much. Yeah, I look forward to seeing more of these going forward.
Talk to you soon, Victoria. Bye, everybody.
Okay.